Thank you for watching our video. Please subscribe to watch our next video. Thank you for watching our video. Please subscribe to watch our next video.
Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe to Black Jewelries and join us for more powerful stuff.
Excuse me, ma'am. Could I sit on your porch tonight? I won't be any trouble. Oh my God. How long have you been standing out there in this rain? A while. Have you eaten anything today? The old man's hands wouldn't stop shaking. Not from nerves, from cold, from hunger, from however many nights had come before this one. Come inside, she said. I've got soup on the stove. No, I don't want to be any trouble. The porch is fine. Sir, you're shivering. I'm not letting you sit out here in this. Come inside. That was Danielle Marsh, 26 years old. $41 in her checking account. A 5-year-old daughter asleep down the hall. 5 months behind on a mortgage she had no way of paying. And she opened her door to a complete stranger on the worst night of the year to be outside, when she could barely keep her own daughter fed. 6 months later, when the town of Cedar Hollow found out exactly who that old man was, everything Danielle Marsh had built out of nothing would either collapse under her or hold. Let me tell you who Danielle really was. Not the woman you're about to see standing at a podium in a packed council chamber, voice shaking, refusing to sit down. The woman before that. The one nobody in this story bothered to notice until it was too late not to. 5:45 in the morning, late October, the alarm cut through a house that smelled like cedar and dish soap, and, underneath all of it, still faintly like her grandmother's rose water, even 11 months after the funeral. The house had belonged to her grandmother, Vivian, for 38 years before Danielle inherited it. 2 bedrooms, a bathroom with a window that never quite closed all the way, and a kitchen faucet that dripped no matter how many times a plumber swore he'd fixed it for good. Danielle rolled out of bed the same way she rolled out of bed every single morning of her life now. Brush her teeth, pull her hair back, check on Nora still curled under a quilt, one arm wrapped around a stuffed elephant her father had won for her at the county fair 2 summers back. Her father, Marcus Marsh. 9 months gone. He'd fallen from a scaffold at a Hallbrook construction site on a Tuesday afternoon in January, and the company's entire response had come in one letter, typed, signed, and mailed with a first-class stamp like it was nothing more than a receipt. After a full internal review, the letter read, Hallbrook Construction has determined that the incident resulted from Mr. Marsh's failure to follow posted safety procedures. Your claim for compensation is therefore denied. That letter sat folded in Danielle's kitchen drawer. She'd read it so many times the creases had gone soft. She couldn't afford a lawyer to fight it. She could barely afford groceries. The mortgage was $910 a month. Marcus used to cover it without her ever thinking twice. Now she was 5 months behind, and between the mortgage and the funeral bill, still hanging over her head, she owed somewhere north of $19,000. Her bank balance, the morning this story really begins, was $41.06, not $410. 41. But Danielle Marsh did not lie in that bed feeling sorry for herself. Not that morning. Not any morning. She kissed Nora's forehead, dropped her at the house next door with Ruth Odell, 63 years old, a retired school secretary who had never once in her life said no to a neighbor in need, and caught the 6:12 bus to Della's Diner, where she worked the morning shift, 6:30 to 2, for $11.25 an hour, plus whatever people felt like leaving on the table. She was good at that job. Not the kind of good where you fake a smile until your face aches. The real kind. She remembered names. She remembered orders. Mr. Kowalski liked his eggs over easy toast cut on the diagonal, never straight across, and Danielle never once got it wrong. Here's the part you need to understand about who Danielle Marsh actually was, underneath the exhaustion and the bills and the grief she never had time to sit with. A young mother had come in one Wednesday, a toddler on her hip, no older than 3, syrup already smeared across his knuckles before the pancakes had even arrived. When the check came, her card was declined. She tried it a second time, declined again. Her face went the color of the tablecloth. Danielle walked over before anyone else at the counter could even glance up. "Don't worry about it," she said quietly. "It's taken care of." "What? No, I can't let you. It's already done, ma'am. Have a good morning." She paid the tab out of her own tip jar. $11.80. Nearly everything she'd made in 4 hours of running plates. She didn't post about it. She didn't tell a soul at the diner. She just went back to refilling coffee like nothing had happened at all. That was Danielle. That had always been Danielle. And every single night, after picking Nora up from Ruth's and getting her down to sleep, Danielle caught the 9:20 bus across town for her second job, cleaning the Cedar Hollow Municipal Building. She mopped the hallways, emptied the trash cans, scrubbed the bathrooms on the second floor, and every night she walked past a row of offices with nameplates she'd never once thought twice about. One of those nameplates read, "Councilman Roy Pemberton, District 4. One Thursday night, emptying Pemberton's wastebasket, she noticed a document laid flat across his desk. A map, her street highlighted in yellow marker, thick and unmistakable. At the top in bold type, Hollow Crest Commons proposed rezoning application. She didn't understand every line of it, but she understood a highlighter covering her entire block. She understood the words eminent domain sitting right there in the second paragraph. She took a photo with her phone. She couldn't have told you exactly why. Something in her simply said, "Take the picture." Then she finished mopping, caught the last bus home, and sat at her kitchen table, staring at that photo until her eyes burned dry. 14 houses on her street, her grandmother's house, Marcus's house, Nora's house, all of it swallowed inside that yellow highlight like it had already been erased. The next morning, Ruth leaned over the fence while Danielle headed out to catch her bus. "Baby, you seen those new signs going up on the empty lots?" "Future home of Hollow Crest Commons. They can't just take our homes, Miss Ruth." "Honey, they don't take. They just make it so you can't afford to stay." That same Thursday, the rain had started around 9 and hadn't let up since. Danielle got home from the municipal building, close to 11, carried a sleeping Nora home from Ruth's, tucked her into bed, and sat back down at the kitchen table, with that photo still glowing on her phone screen. 11:20. A knock at the door, soft, almost apologetic, like whoever it was already expected to be turned away. Nobody knocked on Danielle's door at 11:20 at night. She looked through the peephole. An old man, white, somewhere north of 70, soaked through a thin coat that clung to him like a second skin. A small suitcase held together with packing tape, and his shoes no laces. The kind of detail you only notice if you already know what it means. The kind of thing they take from you at a shelter. She opened the door. "Excuse me, ma'am. Could I just sit on your porch tonight?" "I won't be any trouble." His voice was steady, his body wasn't. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. "How long have you been out in this?" She asked. "A while. Have you eaten today?" He looked down at the wet boards of the porch. That was his whole answer. Danielle looked at this man, 73. She'd learn later, standing in the rain, asking for nothing more than permission to sit somewhere dry. Not to come in, not for food, just permission to sit. And Danielle Marsh, $41 in her account, 5 months behind on the mortgage, her daughter asleep 10 feet away, said the only thing she ever could have said. "Come inside. I've got soup on the stove." "No, please, the porch is fine, really, sir. You're shivering. I'm not letting you sit out here." "Come in." He hesitated at the threshold, his eyes landing on a small pair of pink sneakers by the door. "You have a child. I have soup, and you need it worse than I do. Come inside before you catch something worse than a cold." He stepped in slowly, the way a man steps into a place he's forgotten the shape of. She handed him a towel, a pair of Marcus's old wool socks that had sat folded in a drawer for 9 months, and a bowl of canned chicken noodle soup. Nothing fancy, but the way that man wrapped both hands around that bowl before he'd even tasted it, like it was something sacred, told her more than any story he could have given her. "Thank you," he said, and his voice caught. I can't remember the last time somebody. He stopped, pressed his lips together. Looked away. Danielle didn't push. She sat across from him and let him eat in peace. When he finished, he washed the bowl himself, dried it, and set it back exactly where it belonged. You didn't have to do any of this, he told her. You didn't have to open the door, but you did. She made up the couch with an extra blanket and one of Nora's spare pillows. Ma'am, I don't even know your name, he said. Danielle. Walter, he answered. A pause. Thank you, Danielle, truly. She turned off the light and went to bed without asking his last name, without asking where he'd come from. She had simply given a stranger soup and a dry place to sleep, and for tonight, that was the whole of it. At 5:45 the next morning, she left a note on the counter. There's coffee. Lock up if you go. D and went to work. When she came home that afternoon, the house was spotless. Dishes washed, floors swept, and the kitchen faucet, the one that had dripped for 2 straight years, no matter who she paid to fix it, was silent. Nora was on the couch beside Walter, laughing while he read her a picture book in a chorus of ridiculous voices. Laughing. Danielle hadn't heard that particular sound out of her daughter in 9 months. Walter jumped to his feet like he'd been caught somewhere he shouldn't be. I'm sorry, she asked me to read to her. Danielle looked at her daughter's face, then at the silent faucet. Then back at Walter. You fixed my faucet. I used to work with my hands, a long time ago. You got somewhere to be tonight, Walter? Silence. His eyes were already saying goodbye before his mouth could. Then stay, she said. I can't keep taking from you, Danielle. You fixed my faucet. You read to my kid. You cleaned my whole house. Stay. He looked at Nora, who was already flipping to the next page, waiting for him to come back and finish the story. He sat back down, and he stayed. For the first week, Walter tried to leave 3 separate times. On the 4th morning, Danielle came home to find his blanket folded neatly on the couch and his suitcase already by the door. I've stayed too long, he said. You've already been far too kind. Walter, it's been 4 days. That's 3 more than I asked for. She picked the suitcase back up and set it in the corner where it belonged. You leave when you've got somewhere to go. Not before that. He didn't argue. By the 2nd week, the small things had started to add up without either of them announcing it. The loose step on the porch gone. The window in Nora's room that let cold air whistle through every night, resealed. A hairline crack in a support beam under the roof, reinforced with scrap lumber pulled from the garage, every repair precise. Professional. The work of a man who used to build things for a living, not fix them on the side. How do you know how to do all this? She asked him once, watching him work. Another life, he said. Nothing more. You were in construction, something like that. He wiped his hands on a rag and changed the subject to what Nora wanted for dinner. He did that every time the conversation drifted too close to who he used to be, steered it, gently but firmly, toward noodles or the weather, or something funny Nora had said that morning. Like there was a locked door somewhere inside him, and he'd thrown the key into a river years ago. But he couldn't hide everything. That first week outdoors had left real damage in his chest. A cough that wouldn't quit. Some nights, Danielle could hear him through the thin wall trying to muffle it so it wouldn't wake Nora. And one night she found him on the couch, shaking under the blanket, coughing from somewhere that sounded broken. Walter, you need medicine.
I'll be fine.
It'll pass. You are not fine. The next morning, she spent $22 at the pharmacy on cold medicine, every cent of her tips from the day before, and that night she ate 2 slices of bread from her work bag, so Walter and Nora could both have a full plate. She never mentioned it. She never did. By the 3rd week, she took him to the public library to get him an identification card free, no driver's license required, just a name and an address. The librarian smiled and asked for a last name. Walter's hand froze over the form for exactly 1 second too long. Bishop, he said quietly. The librarian wrote it down and slid the card across the counter without a second glance. But here's the interesting part. Walter didn't check out novels or newspapers. He walked straight to the legal section. Property law. Zoning codes. Homeowner rights. Danielle noticed. She didn't ask. That same week, Nora brought her a new drawing before bedtime. She'd been drawing their house every night since her father passed, always 4 figures standing out front. Mom, Nora, Dad, great-grandma Vivian. This time there were 5. The 5th figure stood taller than the others. White hair, standing right beside Nora. Who's that, baby? That's Grandpa Walt. Danielle looked at that drawing for a long time. Then she looked at Walter, humming some old tune at the sink while he washed dishes. Funny. She taped the drawing to the refrigerator right next to the others. For the first time in 9 months, that refrigerator door didn't look quite so sad. Funny. 2 months passed. October slid into December, and the Hollow Crest Commons rezoning hearing was scheduled for a Thursday evening at the Cedar Hollow Community Center. Funny. Walter had been preparing Danielle for 2 weeks straight. Every night after Nora fell asleep, the two of them sat at the kitchen table with library books stacked between them. Funny. He'd tap a paragraph. She'd read it aloud. He'd explain it in plain English, then quiz her. Less like a teacher and more like a coach putting a fighter through one last round before the bell. Funny. This right here, he said one night, tapping the photo she'd taken of the rezoning application, filed September the 14th. Funny. Public comment didn't open until the 28th. You see it? What does that mean? It means they filed before the public had any legal right to weigh in. Funny. That's a procedural violation. Is that illegal? It's enough to stall them. Maybe long enough to matter. He'd also found something buried in her own mortgage paperwork. The bank had skipped a required certified mailing 90 days before it could legally begin foreclosure. Funny. That bought her extra time whether the bank liked it or not. You're telling me the bank made a mistake? Funny. I'm telling you, the bank didn't follow its own rules. That's leverage. For the first time in months, Danielle felt something that wasn't quite hope, but was close enough to let a little light through a crack in the wall. Funny. The night of the hearing, the community center was packed wall to wall. Ruth saved Danielle a seat and leaned in close. Funny. You sure about this, baby? No. But I'm doing it anyway. Councilman Pemberton sat behind the front table with 2 other council members and a developer in a gray suit. Funny. The developer went first slides, glossy renderings, 200 luxury units, ground floor retail, a rooftop gym, all of it wrapped in words like revitalization and opportunity. Funny. Nobody in that room wanted their property values raised. They knew exactly what that meant. Taxes they couldn't pay. Being priced out until selling wasn't a choice anymore, just a formality. Funny. Nobody knew how to say that out loud in language the council would actually listen to. Then Danielle stood up. Funny. Her hands were shaking. Pemberton looked at her, the cleaning woman from his own hallway, on her feet at a public hearing. Funny. Ma'am, do you have a comment? Yes, sir, I do. She held up her phone. This rezoning application was filed September 14th. Funny. The public comment period didn't open until September 28th. That's a direct violation of Section 12(4) of the Municipal Zoning Code. Funny. Silence. Pemberton blinked, recovered quickly, plastered a smile back on. I appreciate the enthusiasm, ma'am, but I think you're misreading the timeline. Funny. I'm reading your own document, sir. I took this photo myself, September 14th, clear as day. Murmurs rippled through the room. Funny. Someone clapped, then more. Pemberton's smile never dropped, but something cold moved behind his eyes. We'll take your comment under advisement, he said. Funny. Thank you. The council voted to delay the decision 60 days. Not a victory, not a loss either. A breath of room. Funny. Outside, people Danielle had never spoken to shook her hand. An 81-year-old man named Otis Booker, a veteran who'd lived on that street longer than anyone alive, found her by the door. Funny. Young lady, I got a letter last month offering me $65,000 for a house worth twice that. You still got that letter, mister? Funny. Booker, got every letter they ever sent me. Bring them by tomorrow. We'll go through them together. She was running on fumes. Funny. Up since 5:45, a full shift at the diner, Nora tucked into bed, and she'd just challenged a sitting councilman with nothing but a phone and a library book. Funny. She had every right to go home and fall apart. Instead, she told an 81-year-old man to bring his shoebox of letters by in the morning. Funny. That was Danielle. Walter watched from across the parking lot. He didn't say a word, but she caught him wiping his eyes before he turned away. Funny. The next night, Otis showed up with that shoebox buyout offers, code warnings, condemnation threats, all addressed to homeowners scattered across the same 3 blocks. Funny. Danielle and Walter sat with him for 2 hours, reading every single one. They're doing this to everybody, Danielle said. Funny. Not the same thing, Walter corrected. The same pattern, and a pattern means it's coordinated. Meanwhile, Pemberton wasn't sleeping either. By Friday, a code inspector showed up at Danielle's door with a clipboard. 3 citations peeling exterior paint, an unregistered occupant with no lease on file, a non-compliant electrical panel. Total fines, $2,800. Danielle made about $1,900 a month. Walter read the citation twice. This is retaliation. Textbook. What do you mean? They didn't send an inspector because your paint's peeling. Every house on this block has peeling paint. They sent him because you embarrassed a man who does not like being embarrassed. So what do I do? Document everything. Keep copies. Don't stop. That night, sitting on the porch steps with the citation between them, Walter said something Danielle didn't expect. I had a son once, he said quietly. He used to sit in rooms just like that hearing tonight, except he sat on the other side. The side with the slides. What happened? I told him he was becoming a man his mother wouldn't recognize. He told me I was living in the past. I walked out, haven't spoken to him since. It was the most Walter had said about himself in 2 months. It landed somewhere in Danielle she wasn't ready for. Well, she finally said, I guess we both know what it's like to lose someone to a world that doesn't much care about people like us. I guess we do. Month 3, then 4. Something strange began to settle over that little house on Larkspur Street. It started to feel, quietly and without ceremony, like a home again. Walter started picking up furniture people left on the curb. A chair here, a side table, they're sanding, repainting, selling the finished pieces at the weekend flea market for $15 or $20 a piece. Every dollar went into a jar on the kitchen counter labeled house. He never once touched it. Walter, you don't have to do that. I eat your food, I sleep on your couch. Yes, I do. Evenings settled into a rhythm. Danielle cooked. Walter washed dishes. Nora sat between them drawing pictures, while Walter told her stories about buildings he used to work on, towers, bridges, things that touched the sky. You built a bridge? Helped build one, a long time ago. Was it big? Big enough that if you stood on top of it, you could see the whole city spread out below you like a quilt. Danielle watched from the kitchen doorway, drying a plate, saying nothing. But she was smiling. She hadn't smiled like that in a very long time. One slow afternoon at the diner, a coworker flipped through a magazine somebody had left on the counter. Hey, you ever heard of this guy? Says here he just bought half of downtown Millbrook. Billionaire. Danielle glanced at the cover, a man in a dark suit, sharp jaw, cold eyes. The name underneath read, Richard Bishop, CEO Bishop Capital Group, Bishop. She stared a second too long, then went back to clearing tables. That night, after Nora was asleep, Danielle found Walter on the porch in the dark, holding the cheap prepaid phone she'd bought him weeks earlier. The screen glowed with a number typed in. His thumb hovered over the call button. He didn't press it. He deleted the number, set the phone down, and stared out at nothing for a long, long while. Danielle stepped back inside without a word. But now she had 2 things she couldn't stop turning over in her head: a magazine cover and a phone call that never got made. Month 5. Everything broke open at once. It started with a yellow notice taped to Danielle's front door. She found it on a Tuesday afternoon, still in her diner uniform, Nora on her hip. City of Cedar Hollow, notice of condemnation. The house had been declared structurally unsound. 30 days to bring it up to code or vacate. Estimated cost of repairs, $21,000. She read it 3 times, the words never changed. She sat down on the porch step and pressed both hands over her face. She didn't cry. She was long past crying. She was somewhere quieter than that, a place where the body just goes still, because it doesn't have anywhere left to send the feeling. Walter came out and read the notice over her shoulder. His jaw tightened. This isn't about the house. The house is fine, I reinforced that beam myself. This is Pemberton. That same week, Pemberton visited 3 neighbors privately, one by one. He never threatened outright. He simply suggested, in that soft, self-righteous way of his, that the old man staying at the Marsh house might not be who he claimed to be. No ID on file, no background, no one who knows where he actually came from. You've got children on this street. I just think the community deserves to ask questions. 3 neighbors signed a petition, requesting the council investigate the unidentified man living at the Marsh residence. It went up on the corner store bulletin board. Danielle saw her own name on it walking home from the bus stop. Ruth refused to sign. She told Pemberton to his face, "I've known that girl since she was running barefoot through my yard. Don't you dare drag me into this." But 3 signatures were enough. The whispers got louder. People who'd shaken Danielle's hand the night of the hearing started crossing the street rather than pass Walter sitting on the porch. That night, Walter sat Danielle down at the kitchen table after Nora had gone to sleep. "I need to go, Danielle." "No, listen to me. They're coming after you because of me. The petition, the condemnation, all of it. If I leave, it stops." "You don't know that. I know I'm making it worse. You're about to lose your home, and I am the reason they're moving faster." Danielle looked at this man who had fixed her faucet, read to her daughter every single night, dropped every dollar he earned into a jar he never once touched, who ate last so Nora could eat first, who had nowhere else on earth to go. "Walter, you're family now. You hear me? And family doesn't put each other out on the street. Danielle, you're staying. We'll figure it out. We always do." His shoulders dropped, not in defeat, in something else entirely, something he hadn't let himself feel in a very long time. He turned his face away so she wouldn't see it. The next evening, Danielle came home early and heard his voice through the back screen door, low, almost a whisper. "Tell him it's his father calling, please. Just tell him." A long pause. "I understand. Thank you." He hung up, sat there holding the phone with both hands, staring at the floorboards. When he looked up and saw her standing in the doorway, something in his face finally came apart. "Sit down, Walter." "Tell me." And he did. His real name was Walter Bishop. His son was Richard Bishop, the billionaire on the magazine cover, the man who'd just bought half of downtown Millbrook, whose company had a well-earned reputation for moving working families out of neighborhoods so luxury towers could take their place. 2 years earlier, Walter and Richard had the worst argument of their lives. Walter's wife, Margaret, had died 5 years before that, and she had always been the bridge between father and son. Without her, there was nothing left to absorb the collision. "I told him he was becoming a man his mother would be ashamed of," Walter said. "He told me I was a relic who didn't understand how the world worked anymore. So you left." I walked out his front door and never went back. Pride. Stubbornness. I don't even have right word for it anymore. I couldn't keep living in a house built on money that came from pushing people out of theirs. Savings ran out within the year, then shelters, then the street. Danielle sat with that for a long moment, the billionaire's father, sleeping in the rain, showing up on my porch with no laces in his shoes. "So you've been helping me fight the exact same thing your own son does for a living." "Last time," Walter said, "I just walked away and told myself that was the same as standing up for something. It wasn't. This time I wanted to stay. I wanted to do something that actually mattered." Danielle was quiet a long while. Then she asked one more question, softer than the rest. "Holbrook Construction. The company my husband died working for. Does that name mean anything to you?" Walter's face changed, not shock exactly, more like recognition arriving with dread already attached. Holbrook was a subcontractor. They worked several jobs for Bishop Capital projects. Cut corners everywhere. I warned Richard about them years ago. Danielle pulled her hand back slowly. "My husband died on one of their sites, Walter." The kitchen went silent. Walter closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were wet. "I didn't know that. I swear to you, I did not know." "I believe you," Danielle said, and she did. Because Danielle Marsh had never kept people in her life based on what they could give her. She kept them based on who they were when they had nothing left to give at all. What neither of them knew was that down 2 Mile inside the Cedar Hollow Municipal Building, Councilman Pemberton had just run Walter's real name through a public records search. And what came back made him pick up the phone. "Mr. Bishop's office. Yes, my name is Roy Pemberton. I'm a city councilman here in Cedar Hollow. I believe I know where your father is. And I think the two of us can help each other." The next morning, Danielle made 2 cups of coffee and set one in front of Walter like it was an ordinary day. "You're not angry," he said. "I didn't say that. But you're still sitting here. I'm sitting here because we have work to do. Honey. And because you don't stop being family, just because you were carrying a secret, you stop being family when you stop showing up. Honey. You are still here. They spent the next 3 days building the case, spreading everything across that kitchen table like a war room. Honey. Danielle's photo of the original filing date, Otis Booker's shoebox of matching buyout letters, all sent within the same 60-day window. Honey. Walter's library, notes cross-referencing council votes against contractor bids, and that's where they found it. Pemberton's brother-in-law, a man named Gary Fenn, owned a contracting outfit called Fenn & Sons, which had submitted bids on 3 separate Hollow Crest Commons subcontracts. Honey. The councilman pushing the project had a direct family member standing to profit from it. That's a conflict of interest, Walter said. Honey. Plain as glass. Can we prove it? The bids are public record. The family tie is public record. Somebody just has to lay them side by side. Honey. They also had testimony. 2 other homeowners, a Mrs. Delacroix and a Mr. Ruiz, had received condemnation notices nearly identical to Danielle's same inspector, same 30-day window, same 3 houses sitting squarely inside the Hollow Crest Commons footprint. Honey. 3 notices, same inspector, same deadline, same project. That wasn't code enforcement. That was a pattern. Danielle needed one more piece, someone official who would actually listen. Honey. She found him on a Wednesday afternoon, waiting outside the precinct after his shift. Officer Dale Marsh, no relation. Just a coincidence of last names that made Danielle smile despite everything, had responded to a noise complaint on her block 2 months earlier. Honey. Routine. Nothing had come of it, but he'd been polite. He'd listened like he actually meant it. She showed him the pattern laid out on paper. Honey. He studied it carefully, his expression giving nothing away, though his eyes moved fast. I can't officially take sides, he told her. Honey. But I can tell you the State Inspector General's office takes anonymous complaints about patterns like this very seriously. Be careful, Miss Marsh. Honey. People who push back against City Hall don't always push back on gently. I know, she said. I've already been pushed. Honey. That night, after Nora fell asleep, Walter made the call. The real one. Not through an assistant. He dialed the private number he'd deleted from his phone a dozen times over the past 4 months. Honey. It rang 3 times. Hello, Conrad, it's your father. Silence. 5 seconds. 10. Dad. Richard's voice broke on that single word. Honey. I've had people looking for you for 2 years, Richard said. I know. I wasn't ready to be found. Where are you? Honey. Are you all right? I'm in a town called Cedar Hollow. Staying with a young woman named Danielle Marsh. She took me in when I had nowhere else to go. Honey. Fed me with money she didn't have. Called me family when the whole town turned against her for it. I'm not calling to ask you for anything, Richard. Honey. I'm calling because Danielle needs help I can't give alone. This town is trying to take her home the same way our company takes homes, and I need you to come see it with your own eyes. Honey. There's also something about a contractor called Halbrook. Something you need to hear in person. A long silence. I'll be there Thursday, Richard finally said. Honey. Walter hung up and set the phone on the table with both hands still shaking. Danielle set a glass of water next to him without saying a word. Honey. Some conversations don't need a response. They just need somebody nearby when it's over. Thursday came. A black SUV pulled onto Larkspur Street at 2:14 in the afternoon, looking as out of place as a spaceship. Honey. Every neighbor on the block noticed. Ruth nearly dropped her watering can. Richard Bishop stepped out. Tall, charcoal suit, silver cufflinks. Honey. The same man from the magazine cover, except up close he looked tired, in a way money had never once been able to fix. Honey. Walter was already standing on the porch. He hadn't sat down all morning. Richard crossed the yard, stopped at the bottom step, and looked up at his father. Honey. Neither of them moved for a long moment. Then Richard climbed the steps and put a hand on his father's shoulder. Honey. Walter covered his son's hand with his own. That was it. No embrace, no speech. Just a father and son standing on a porch, saying everything neither of them could put into words. Honey. Danielle watched from behind the screen door and let them have their moment before she opened it. Mr. Bishop. Come in. Honey. Richard stepped into the house and saw the kitchen table still covered in evidence and notes in his father's handwriting. Honey. He saw Nora's drawings taped to the refrigerator, 5 figures standing outside a little house. He saw a framed photograph of Marcus on the wall. He saw the jar labeled House on the counter, Walter's flea market earnings, still untouched. He saw code violation notices stacked next to a box of crayons. He saw all of it. Danielle sat him down at the same table where she'd fed his father soup 6 months earlier. I'm not asking you for money, Mr. Bishop. I'm asking you to look at what's happening in this town and tell me if it's right. Richard looked at her for a long time. Show me everything, he said. She did. Every document, every letter, every photograph. Every note in his father's handwriting. Richard made one phone call. His legal team was in Cedar Hollow by Friday morning. 4 attorneys, 2 investigators, 48 hours. What they found was this. Gary Fenn, Pemberton's brother-in-law, had been awarded 3 subcontracts on Hollow Crest Commons worth $4.1 million combined. Pemberton had voted to approve the very rezoning that made those contracts possible. Conflict of interest confirmed. 3 condemnation notices, Danielle's, Mrs. Delacroix's, Mr. Ruiz, all issued by the same inspector, same 30-day window, all sitting inside the redevelopment footprint. No other property in Cedar Hollow had received a condemnation notice that entire year. Selective enforcement confirmed. The rezoning application had been filed 14 days before the public comment window legally opened. Procedural violation, documented in black and white. And the phone call. Pemberton's own call to Richard's office had been recorded, standard protocol for his assistance line. On that recording, Pemberton explicitly offered to arrange the reunion between Richard and his father, in exchange for Bishop Capital's investment in the Hollow Crest project. He tried to trade a homeless old man for a business deal. Richard listened to that recording twice in Danielle's kitchen. The second time, his hands were shaking. "This is who I've been letting run my instincts," he said quietly, mostly to himself. "This is the system I helped build." The council meeting was set for the following Tuesday, 6 months to the day, since Walter first knocked on Danielle's door. The chamber was packed to standing room, a local news camera set up in the back corner. Pemberton sat at the front table, confident, expecting to hear Richard Bishop announce a major investment in Hollow Crest Commons. He'd told 2 council members exactly that very morning. Nora stayed home with Ruth. Danielle sat in the 3rd row, Walter beside her. He reached over and squeezed her hand once. She squeezed back. Richard Bishop walked to the podium and set down a single folder. Thin, almost nothing. He looked out across the room and then he spoke. 6 months ago, a 26-year-old widow in this town had every reason in the world to lock her door and keep it locked. She was drowning in debt, raising her daughter alone, about to lose the only home she had left. But when my father, a 73-year-old man, with no ID, no name anyone recognized, nothing to his name at all, knocked on her porch and asked to sit out of the rain, she didn't lock the door. She opened it. The room fell silent. She gave him soup with money she didn't have. She gave him a couch she couldn't afford to replace. And when this city came after her, the fines, the condemnation notice, her own neighbors signing a petition against her, she looked at my father and told him, "Your family." Family doesn't put each other out on the street. He opened the folder. "I'm not here to invest in Hollow Crest Commons. I'm here to show this room what Hollow Crest Commons actually is." He laid it all out, piece by piece, the conflict of interest, the selective enforcement, the procedural violation, and then he played the recording. Pemberton's own voice filled the chamber. "I believe I know where your father is, and I think we can help each other." The room erupted. Pemberton grabbed his microphone. The council chair cut it off. Richard wasn't finished. "There's something else this room needs to hear, and it isn't comfortable. My company, Bishop Capital, is part of this same problem. Not this specific project, the system underneath it. We've built our success on deals that treat people as line items instead of neighbors. We've hired contractors who cut corners because cutting corners was cheaper. One of those contractors was Halbrook Construction." He looked directly at Danielle. Danielle Marsh's husband, Marcus Marsh, lost his life on a Halbrook site, a site where safety procedures were ignored because ignoring them saved money. My company didn't build that particular site, but we helped build the world that let it happen. My father tried to warn me once. I didn't listen. The room went completely still. Somewhere in the back, someone was crying quietly. Kindness given freely, Richard said, is the only investment that never loses its value. He stepped back from the microphone. The council voted unanimously to suspend the Hollow Crest Commons, rezoning pending a full ethics investigation into Councilman Pemberton's conduct. Pemberton sat frozen in his chair. His career didn't end with a scandal headline. It ended with a raised hand and a vote count. Outside, the cold air was full of people, neighbors, strangers. A reporter pushed through the crowd. "Miss Marsh, did you know who Walter really was when you took him in?" Danielle looked at the reporter, then at Walter, standing a few feet away, his son's hand still resting on his shoulder. "No," she said, "and it wouldn't have mattered either way. He was a man standing in the rain. I had a porch." She turned away before the next question could land, walked over to Walter, and took his arm. "Let's go home." Nora's waiting. 1 month later, Richard paid off Danielle's mortgage and the remaining funeral debt in full. "I didn't ask for this," Danielle said. "I know this isn't charity," Richard told her. "It's responsibility. My system helped create the world that took your husband from you. The very least I can do is make sure it doesn't take your home too." She accepted, not easily, but because he was right. Richard established the Marcus Marsh Community Trust, free legal aid for families facing forced buyouts, and independent safety inspections at construction sites across the state. Marcus's name attached to something that would keep other families from living through what Danielle had. Halbrook Construction was referred to the Federal Inspector General. An investigation opened within weeks. Danielle received a full scholarship to study law, not paralegal studies. Law she started that spring. Walter moved into a small apartment 3 blocks away, his choice, not a compromise. Richard had offered him anything, a penthouse, a house in the suburbs, anywhere he wanted. Walter wanted 3 blocks away. Every afternoon at 3:15 he walked to Nora's preschool and picked her up, her hand in his, telling him about her day in that breathless way 5-year-olds do. She still called him Grandpa Walt. Walter and Richard started having dinner together every Sunday, slowly, carefully, 2 men relearning what it meant to be father and son. Roy Pemberton did not win re-election, no dramatic downfall, just a quiet exit, and nobody threw him a parade for it. Nobody needed to. The 3 neighbors who'd signed that petition came to Danielle's door one Saturday with a cake. The woman in front couldn't quite meet her eyes. "We're sorry," she said. "We should have known better." Danielle looked at them, then opened the door wider. "Come in." "I just made coffee." They sat around that same kitchen table where all of it had happened, and ate cake, and talked about the weather, and whose kids were starting kindergarten in the fall. Danielle didn't need an apology speech. She just needed the door to stay open. That evening, Danielle and Walter sat on the porch, same 2 chairs as always. From inside, Nora sang something she'd learned in school, off-key and completely beautiful. Walter poured Danielle a cup of coffee without asking, the way he always did now. "You ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't opened that door?" Danielle wrapped both hands around the mug. "No. Marcus used to say we were the people standing in the rain once too, so we don't lock the door when it's raining." Neither of them said anything else. They didn't need to. Ruth Odell still sits on her own porch most evenings and tells this story to anyone who will stand still long enough to listen to the mail carrier, the new family down the block, the kid delivering groceries. She tells it the same way every time, and her voice cracks in the same place every time she gets there. That girl gave a stranger her last bowl of soup, her very last bowl. She never gets tired of telling it, because some stories were never really about billionaires or council chambers at all. They're about a bowl of soup on a rainy night, a door that opened when the whole world was telling somebody to keep it shut. If this story reminded you that a small act of kindness can still carry weight in a world that often forgets to be kind, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it today, and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. What stayed with me most working on this one is simple. The people who give the most rarely have the most to give. They're the ones who remember what it felt like to have nothing. They remember the rain. They remember the hunger. They remember standing outside a door, hoping somebody on the other side would open it. And because they remember, they open theirs anyway, even when it doesn't make financial sense, even when the whole world tells them to protect themselves first. So here's what I'd ask of you before you go. The next time somebody knocks, don't ask who they are first. Don't calculate whether it's worth your time. Just open the door. Share what you have, even if it's only soup, even if it's your very last bowl, because you never know what that one bowl of soup might grow into. We were all standing in the rain once, every single one of us. Like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this one every week. And remember, kindness given freely is the only investment that never loses its value. Disclaimer: this story is a work of created for entertainment and educational purposes only. All characters, names, businesses, and events depicted are entirely fictional and do not represent any real person, living or dead, or any actual establishment. Any resemblance to real persons, organizations, or events is purely coincidental. This content is intended to explore themes of human dignity, workplace ethics, and social justice through narrative storytelling. It does not make factual claims about any individual, company, or institution.